So I think we'll get started. Thanks everybody for rearranging your schedule to have our 2 meetings on the 27th instead of the 28th. Several of us will be going to the latest version of the city's boards and commissions realignment tomorrow in the same time slot. So we should have more to talk about on that. After that, let me flash up the agenda for today. I still see you all. So we got the usual consent agenda. Helen may have something to say about a neighborhood she's working with, including her own. They're working on grants. I'm going to just give you guys a brief update on what's going on with the Noise Advisory Board, of which I'm vice chair. I'm going to share kind of where we are in making a homelessness plan. Patrick will tell us whether he got anything new from the government this week about where we are with developers guide, and I think Mike et al. Will be giving us a heads up on their planning for forums and recordings of candidates for election, and then any new business. And we have to stay on a fairly good schedule, which I hope will be okay, so that everyone can get a few minutes break between this and the general membership meeting, where Captain Lamb will be working through some slides on crime and answering questions, both that have been submitted. And since he's really the only item on the general membership meeting, if we get more folks and we have more questions, then we'll go as long as he's willing. Okay. So first is consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you, Patrick. Okay. I'm gonna turn off the share so that you can see everybody well, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Helen to talk about neighborhood grant applications.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to find out if anybody else had applied for neighborhood grants that they could share with us. And if they have not, I will share the 2 that I'm aware of.
Barbara?
Hawk Creek got I'm sure y'all probably saw that in the paper, but Hawk Creek did get a neighborhood grant of 5,000, is it 5,000 numbers?
What was it for?
Okay, we had, I thought we got 5,000, but we're putting in a bridge down at Creekside to keep people from being pancakes coming to that restaurant, because they have to walk, they have nowhere to walk but in the middle of the road. So in the middle of Beverly Road. So we were given that to help get that bridge put in. We had to get permission from AT&T to put it over one of their equipment boxes. So it has to be engineered. Rick can appreciate this. It has to be engineered so that they can still access the wiring and stuff in that equipment box. It's across the street. But we did get a neighborhood grant. We were successful.
Thank you. And Tom?
Hi, Helen. Don applied for a grant. We received one, but our business partner downtown, decided not to pursue it. That's a completely recent development in the last few days. It was supposed to be a mural on Lexington Street, honoring the Cherokees. And part of the reason they pulled it was because they could not get a commitment from a Cherokee artist, a mural artist, when he could do the mural. So I'm hoping down the road we can still do it, but at this point, it is not on.
Anybody else? Oh, Susan?
Yeah, so Beaver Dam did a neighborhood grant, but I'm not at liberty to share anything about it with you. I'm sworn to secrecy.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Go,
Steve here. Kenilworth has applied for a grant. Don't know yet whether or not we're going to get it. I think the deadline is the 29th. So, and we just got it under the wire yesterday, and it's for a restoration, reclamation of a creek that Kenilworth several years ago was instrumental in having renamed for a long time a resident of our neighborhood, Louise Gibson. It's called Gibson Creek. It runs through a couple of our parks and through several streets throughout Kenilworth. And we are hoping to work with Riverlink, who has got a letter of support in for us to basically clean up that entire stream as it flows through the neighborhood. It ultimately gets down to Swananoa River. We have already applied for and received a grant from the Preservation Society of Asheville and Buncombe County for some signage that we're going to put up commemorating the naming and the family, and a lot of educational material that will be going forward. And we are actually going to be going back to the society in the fall for another bite at that apple. So.
Joe?
Yeah, we got one grant in the first cycle for our community garden, and in the cycle that just closed, we put in another grant for gardening along Klingman and along Hilliard.
Okay.
And the two I'm aware of is I attended a Southside United meeting last week, and they're putting in for a application to try to keep their meetings going, because they need some child support and some support the Southside Kitchen to help them with their meetings, to encourage more activity in their area. So they're hoping to get a grant so that they can actually become more active. And our neighborhood, South French Broad, has put in a grant for Aston Park to put in a disc golf putting course on the perimeter of the course. So that doesn't interfere with anything within the park, but it'll activate the outside of the park and will create more activity there. So we're hoping to get it for that, and we've got matching funds for it. So if nobody else has anything else to share, I'll hand it back to Rick.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna go back into screen share mode for everybody. I have a few sort of whipped up slides here to share with you on what's going on in a couple of ways. So first I'm gonna go, everybody see a slide says noise advisory board on it? Excellent.
Yes. Yeah.
So I thought, nobody's probably paid any attention to this, and you don't need to read this in great detail, but the mission of the Noise Advisory Board is to see if the noise ordinance is effective and make recommendations to City Council for improvement. We don't get like the old board that was quasi judicial, that worked in the midst of certain complaints and that sort of thing. That's not in our charter. That's not how the city formed the board. We're basically looking at stats every month on what's going on and how enforcement's going and all that sort of thing. And we decided fairly early on that, we started meeting in January. It was formed late last year. And we decided we needed a full summer of complaints before making any recommendations, because noise is seasonal, especially when it relates to outdoor music and things like that. And noise travels differently in cold, clear weather than it does in hot, humid weather. So something might not bother you when, amazingly enough, it's cold and there's no leaves on the tree, and it might drive you insane. So we've been looking at these things. We've formed a couple of working groups. one that I formed is to contact complainants where the measured decibel levels were below allowable limits. As some of you may recall, we fought very hard for lower decibel limits in residential areas, and we didn't ever get them. We got a set of decibel limits in commercial areas. And there's been a fair number of complaints and recurring complaints where people say that, you know, they're really having trouble with sound and noise, and the enforcement folks go out there with their meter and they take measurements, and the measurements are acceptable. They're below the limit. So in an effort to try and determine the impact of people who are still being influenced by sound, we're trying to put a questionnaire together, maybe a phone interview, and maybe even some measurements inside their house that we can compare to sort of standard numbers, like how loud a conversation is, how loud a vacuum cleaner is, and all that sort of thing. So we can actually communicate what they actually feel in their homes and how it changes how they work. And that right now is the only idea I've got for coming up with some objective data that could influence a discussion about lowering noise ordinance limits. 3 of the 7 original appointees either have resigned or have ceased to attend. So we're barely hanging on to a quorum that allows us to proceed. We are recruiting on 2 of the 3 positions. We've sort of spread out our meetings to not be every month because we're looking at aggregate totals, so we don't need to stare at 1,500 complaints every month to see what the numbers are. So we have to meet again face to face to vote to get rid of the 3rd person who hasn't attended a single meeting since December, but refuses to resign. It's just, it's weird. It's weird.
Rick,
Yes, Tom.
were you able to find out if anyone from Don applied for the Noise Advisory Board?
I believe somebody did.
They did, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's on my to-do list as vice chair. I can meet with the chair and we can go through the applicants and we can make a recommendation for who should replace the people who've left. But of course, the boards and commissions, city council committee has the last choice on who they want. But given that I represent East Asheville, nobody represents downtown, nobody represents North Asheville. As we're a little bit outnumbered by the chairmans in the music industry, and the West Asheville representative is also in the music industry, works for the Orange Peel and Rabbit. So I'm trying to get a little bit of a broader residential group of folks in so that I'm not outvoted on things that I think need to be done. So we're going ahead regardless of all the hoopla on boards and commissions. You know, a couple things I'd say. Loud vehicle noise, totally unenforced. Just not happening. Just not happening at all. I had a conversation with the folks about some ideas on what we could occasionally do, but that'll have to grind its way through the make a recommendation to city council, get them to approve it, have them hand that work back down to APD and things like that. Waste haulers have been okay, that they've worked with them and fixed some routes and things like that. So that's worked a little bit better. They're trying really hard to work on multifamily housing, you know, hundreds of apartments and all that sort of thing, trying to engage management there to work on that sort of thing. I'd say that it's not clear whether that sort of good neighbor work with management thing is actually going to have an impact and reduce the numbers. The numbers are quite high, ranging around 100 to 170 a month, picking up again now in summertime. So since the overall objective of the noise ordinance was to reduce excess noise, I would say at this stage, it's not being very successful.
Yep.
Mhm.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have one, Rick. Did I unmute?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. With the traffic noise, I've noticed in my various travels that a lot of cities put up signs forbidding truck braking within their city limits, that sort of thing. Do you think it would help to recommend to the city to put some signage up at the city limits about its loud vehicles, truck braking, that sort of, or what do they call that, engine braking, that sort of thing?
I think it's a good idea. I'll take it to we have a meeting in September. I'll take that idea in. I also was in Greenville for something, and I noticed outside the Peace Center, they had big placard signs sitting on the sidewalk talking about what the noise limits were and $1,500 fines. So yeah, whether they actually do that or not, I don't know. But I mean, these were the kind of signs that a restaurant would drag out and put in front of their thing saying we're open, about chest high. So that made me feel like they were really serious about noise. So your idea spurred me to remember that one too.
Rick,
Good.
Yes, sir.
maybe in September, also truck idling. That's a huge problem downtown. They deliver something and if they're there for half an hour, they'll have the engine on for half an hour.
Okay.
There was a state ordinance against that, but when the new Republican GA came in 2010, they promptly got rid of it. So it's now legal again.
Yep.
I think it's specifically legal.
Okay.
I did, if you don't mind, I did just have one more thing I'd like to say, which is that I have found that the noise ordinance enforcement staff is very responsive. In our neighborhood, we've had a lot of issues with noise from the school, like with dumpsters being emptied too early. They took care of that, told the dumpster company not to do it, and they would find them. Now, they've volunteered to outreach to our Rhododendron Creek Neighborhood Association, send someone out to talk to us about, how the noise ordinance applies in residential areas and how we could file a complaint and that sort of thing. So.
Yep. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Stephen. They work really hard. They, in an effort to try to get fair measurements around Mission Hospital, they waited until 3 o'clock in the morning when the traffic on Biltmore was down, and they went out and measured in numerous places, and they go out at night and that sort of thing. The only thing that the enforcement staff won't do is they won't go into a situation they perceive to be dangerous. So if the noise, for example, is coming from a raucous party, with 6 cars pulled around it and stereos blasting and a lot of drinking and that sort of thing, they don't go where they feel it would be a risk to their health and well-being, and they delegate that to APD, which of course is still understaffed and will respond to noise calls, but typically many minutes later. Sharon.
We have a count of how many complaints a month we're getting or have.
Yeah, it's in the neighborhood of 100 to 170 a month. So there's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 complaints, which best I can recall back when we worked on the noise ordinance, that was sort of typical for a year. The enforcement folks gave everybody a bit of a break for the first 6 months. They didn't run right in and write citations. They went and talked to people and that sort of thing. But citation numbers have picked up recently. There was only like 1 or 2, because they'll work this out through a warning first, right? They'll go and work something out, and restaurants or bars will move their speakers around so it's not blasting into somebody's backyard and that sort of thing. And so that'll never yield a citation. But I noticed in the latest statistics I got that they were up to like 7 or 8 citations. So they're having people who are just not responding, who are just like, I don't care. So we'll see how that translates into fines. All of you who know all about enforcement know that citations are one thing, but actually getting people to pay are a second thing. So we track that, we track whether they appeal and whether their appeal was denied and what the citation total is. So we'll see. This is all, for me, it's good to do this because I have been on a board and commission before, and I recognize how it's not a speedy process. Okay, let's keep going. Just so that we don't mess up here. Talk about homelessness. So, we fought around what was going on at the Ramada, and got the switcheroo at the end when they dumped the notion of the low barrier shelter and gave away the right to buy that property to Shangri-La and Step Up on 2nd Street. And then we kind of went quiet, right? From a large degree, we were following the lead of Bailey Stockwell and what was going on with her Facebook group. But things went quiet, and we quickly heard that Dogwood Trust was going to put some money up to hire a nationally known consultant to come in and look at what's been done and what needs to be done. And so the few of us who had still been working on this, which were Helen and Susan and I, we met and said, what's reasonable for us to do at this point in time? Since construction was delayed on the Ramada renovation and things are still going slow with the Days Inn, which is near my neighborhood. And so we decided we needed to try to, then there was big turnover in the city staff that was part of this. This guy, Brian, that was kind of the lead on it, he's left the city. So we thought we would reach out and try to engage and see if we could get Can on the inside track. So to that degree, we have. I've had 2 morning meetings with the person who's responsible for and in charge of the city work. That led to, once the consultant was selected, that led to a meeting between me and the consultant where I did the best I could to repeat everything we knew from the low barrier shelter fight and what East Asheville was saying. Then that led to the consultant reaching out to Helen and I and Patrick. Patrick was unavailable for that call, but we had another good conversation about the usual concerns, everything that everybody who's on this call has ever said. Too many people coming in from out of town, not good enforcement, etc. Crime blows up around where homeless folks are congregated. It's a tough time because APD has a hard time getting out and patrolling to solve those problems. And so there's a fair amount of concern from CAN members about any of these efforts to congregate homeless people into some kind of housing situation that the side effect for the neighborhood that's in. And I know both Barbara and Debbie would be happy when I told them that East Asheville has enough. And it's, trying to put anything more in East Asheville is going to just create an uproar because we have the VA, we have the Ramada, we have the Days Inn. I and a member of my neighborhood, we spent 2 hours with an expert over at the Days Inn, an expert that Susan had connected us with. And I gotta say, that's the first time I've ever spent 2 hours standing along Tunnel Road, and it doesn't take a lot to figure out that at least on that segment of Tunnel Road, there are homeless people going up and down all the time and cutting in behind buildings, and you know, you feel it there. I see Sharon with her head up because I've heard her stories about what happens behind Whole Foods, and it's just scary. So all this groundwork. We learned that the National Alliance to End Homelessness, that's the consulting firm, they will report out monthly on their progress towards their fact-finding and their recommendations to the existing commission, the Hayek Commission, which Susan at least and even Helen have been watching recordings of their meetings. So we talked to NAEH and expressed that there's no neighborhood representation on that commission, and they have put pressure on the city to broaden out that way and to get some neighborhood representatives in there that have voting power. And there's several openings, and those should get filled in August. So, you know, fingers crossed. We might get a representative from CAN on that board to hear what the consultants are saying and ask the kind of questions you can ask live rather than the kind of questions you get at the end when the public comment is there. Debbie.
How do you go about applying for those positions?
Well, they're published along with all the boards and commissions vacancies, and you just gotta get on that email list. I think I'm on every CD email
I'm on that
list.
email list and I've never seen that listing.
I forget when it was. It was either early this month or late last month. The first summary that came out missed it. And I called them up and said, you missed it because I know there are openings. And then they revised it and it was there. So, and there seems like there's always an opening in that organization. So I'll tell you what, I'll make sure everybody gets the copy the next time they solicit folks to be there.
Rick,
Yes, sir.
is the meeting on the 17th of August, is that virtual or is that in person?
At this point, with the latest Omicron variant, my plan is to keep these virtual for a little bit longer. So August was virtual. And thanks for bringing that up, Tom, because Emily Ball, who was sort of the one city person on the homeless team left standing after a shakeup, she will be at that general membership meeting. And so we'll be able to, you know, go fairly deep. Okay. An action item for everybody who's here and anybody who is in your neighborhood that you know would want. CAN's been selected to fill in the 10 people that are going to be part of a focus group representing neighborhoods. And that focus group, as far as I can tell, is going to be on August 17th at noon. So if Helen and I have kind of gone through a list of people we think can be there. I've reached out to people who copy me on emails and things like that about homeless issues that are going on. So these should be, I reached out to Tom because I know that we need somebody from Darn because their view of homelessness is different than I'd say Kenilworth and Kenilworth Forest.
Alexa, play 98.1 The River.
Playing 98.1 The River.
Thanks for triggering my Alexa.
So if you would send an email to any of my half a dozen email addresses like president@asheville-can.org, if you or somebody in your community would like to be part of that focus group, Helen and I and Patrick We'll go through those, make sure we have not 17 people from Hawk Creek and nobody from anywhere else. You know, I'd like to encourage Sharon, if you had the time, because you see it over there all the time, and you have a really broad perspective on the homeless problem. I just know it's middle of the day on a weekday. But anyway, just don't raise your hand and volunteer now without anybody taking notes. Just send me an email and let me know you want to go. Barbara.
I just have a comment, Rick. A friend of mine, and I'm sure Sharon probably knows where this is. He owns DC Freeman Jewelry, and I've known him since he's born, so he's more than a friend. But he told me 2 weeks ago that he was considering buying his location instead of leasing it. But they have such a terrible homeless problem in behind that store, constantly cars being broken into and or trying to be broken into, begging the customers, the whole schmear that you hear, that he decided that he was better off just to lease, because he says he's not sure he's going to be able to stay there if they can't get it under control. And that's before Days Inn opens. So Tunnel Road is a mess, so to speak. And I just wanted Sharon, if she does go on that committee, I'll try to go on it, but I won't be here the 17th. I'm going to be in Hilton Head, South Carolina. So checking on open space thing, but I just want people to be aware that it's not only, you know, on the sides of the roads and the arguments and the fights and the dirt, but the fact that the businesses there in that little strip mall where Freeman Jewelry is being inundated with homeless sleeping. They're running them off. They're running their customers off because they start begging, wanting money from people before they even get in the door.
So there, I haven't seen the whole plan, or if I received it, I haven't had time to consume it, given I was out of town for a while. But there'll be a neighborhood thing that Can's responsible for. There's going to be business center thing. And after this meeting, I'm going to reach out to Bailey Stockwell, since she and her gang, you know, came into being to deal with what was going on at Ramada, which is the closest thing we've had to a low barrier shelter and the side effects of that. So I think I'm hopeful that she or one of her colleagues will be able to really, you know, our goal is to make sure that these consultants don't get some curated view of what the problem is. They need to see the broad view, and Helen will, she'll participate, and, you know, she'll give the South French Broad story very clearly. Sharon.
Yeah, I'm working with the APD on a Google Drive to work with tying in the people that are repeat offenders and how I can keep them off the property. And I've got the homeless encampment back again, and I have to deal with that tomorrow. I've got to call in the hazmat people to clean it all up back there. So I've been dealing with APD every day, and I've got questions for Tom, for Captain Lamb, if we have time left over, about the subsidiary groups that are working with the APD. But Barbara, there is ways around it. It's just you've got to get whomever owns the property involved, and that's how that gets fixed in the shopping centers, strip malls area. So that's, and I will take the time to come, whether I can continue to participate in it, but I've got a huge amount more information working with the city, with the Asheville market and all my problems that I continually have over there.
So anybody who feels that they want to contribute but can't make it because of the timing or something like that, I'll arrange one-on-one time with you between now and then to make sure I hear all of your points, because I'm certainly going to stay involved right on through, representing my neighborhood and what's going to happen at the Days Inn, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So this is like I'm wearing two hats, Can rep and a Kenilworth Forest rep on that. So I doubt that anything that you have on your mind is not something that I'm also worried about, but I just want to hear from folks. Okay. All right, let's go back to the agenda here for a second. Patrick, you're up on neighborhood development guide, and I'm going to stop sharing for the rest of this part of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't submit any documents for in advance for the board to consider, primarily because I didn't get anything from the city, even though I was promised to have all the updated information no later than this past Monday. So I don't have anything really to present to the board. Apparently, Chris Collins, who was spearheading this effort for city staff, lost all of his staff support that was working on this project. They either left city government for jobs elsewhere or moved into other positions in city government. And so, and they have not filled those vacancies yet. So Chris asked me for some information that the Government Relations Committee shared with him back in April. And I sent that to him again. So apparently we're at the same point that we were 3 or 4 months ago on this project. At that time, the timetable was that the neighborhood meeting guide would be implemented in July. And then probably in late August or early September, the city government working with Ken would begin the process of submitting UDO changes that were required per our agreement on the neighborhood meeting guide. So obviously that timetable has been slowed down. And I've asked Chris in an email on Tuesday, yesterday, actually Monday, whether he could give me a better timetable for how this is going to play out. I've not heard back from him. So we're at this point, we're just on hold. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Election team. Mike, you're muted. If you're going to be the chatting guy, you need to unmute. There you go. No, you're still muted.
How's that?
There you go.
That's awesome.
Well, we've been like everybody else fighting vacations and that sort of stuff. And Tom went off to Maine and refuses to send us any lobsters. So, you know, life is tough. Anyway, we met a week ago Monday and met with Bailey, and Bailey's consented to video. But we have a technical obstacle. We can't, as of yet, we have not come up with a way to feed audio to speakers and at the same time feed audio to Bailey's iPhone with which she videoed the 21 candidates back in April, I guess. So I've been talked to maybe 10, maybe 12 people about how to handle this. And I stopped by Rental Me This yesterday, and there's a possibility of being able to make this work with their equipment. And I have a text message into Bailey to see if she could meet me there sometime and we go through a dry run. The next issue is inviting folks. And we got a list of the candidates, and I see maybe 9 to a dozen folks that we might want to, candidates that we might want to invite. That doesn't mean they're going to show up. reply to our invitations. And then Rick, you've consented to go out with a survey to the CAN people about what do you want to ask them. The venue is the East Asheville Library branch. There's parking there, and I went across the street to the Wells Fargo Bank, and the manager consented to let us have overflow parking over there. Hope we'll need it. And so that's where we stand. I have if we can't do the audio feed to Bailey's iPhone, then we're pretty well stuck with having a live forum, COVID willing, and invite the public in and ask them the questions that people get back to us with that are interested. Now, since you're on the noise committee, Rick, wonder if you could maybe check with Rabbit and see if they loan us their sound system. That might work pretty well, but you know, do what you can do.
Good luck with that.
When are you thinking of it, Mike? When are you guys thinking you're gonna do the forum?
I'm sorry, 8th of September. It's a Thursday, I believe. East Asheville Branch Library. It's a nice meeting room, and they have projection capability, but they don't have any sound system.
Helen, you're muted.
What time are you planning on?
Probably about 7 to 9. I think I've got the room for 4 hours. And I'd go over there as early as I can to set up.
I can help you, Mike.
Okay, thank you. And you know, put out chairs and all that sort of stuff, set up tables, and we'll go from there. Keep your fingers crossed so we can work around this glitch.
I have a question.
Hang on a second. Somebody else raised their hand, Steve.
Oh, yes.
Margaret.
I apologize. Sorry, I can't see that.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Margaret. Margaret,
what's the date of this?
8th of September.
Okay, Steve.
So even if you're able to record with the phone, it will still be, like you say, COVID willing. People could attend and ask questions, or are you talking about an either or type of thing? I didn't quite wasn't quite clear on that.
No, we're talking about a live forum. The question is if we can record it and get it on YouTube.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Anybody else with a question? Susan, unmute, please.
So Mike, did you check with AB Tech? Because that's where they did the board forum and they were able to stream it. They were able to record it. I don't know if it was donated or whether it was paid for, but I could certainly find out.
No, I haven't. I was going to check with UNCA though, but I'll check with AB Tech and see if I can get somebody to call me back. I mean, you call around town. I'm still waiting for a reply from Asheville City Schools, maybe their boardroom. Yeah, if you can send me a number or you want to check, that would be great. Just make sure.
I'd be happy to check, Mike.
Maybe just make sure they understand that we want to feed audio to an audience through speakers. And then we want to feed audio to an iPhone. And if they can do that, great. Now, we might have to change the venue.
Yeah.
What I'd like to suggest is let me find out. I know the people that ran the one at AB Tech for the school board. Let me find out how they did that and who they talked to, and then I can get back to you on that. How would that be?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Just do it quick.
and I'll get to you a second, Sharon. If they have somebody who would do the whole thing, would do the recording and all that sort of stuff, I am about 100% sure it wouldn't break Bailey's heart if she didn't have to come in and do that.
Yeah.
She's just the one tech person who we know has done that kind of thing. So that's how it sort of got set up. Sharon.
Mike, is it going to be a moderator? You asked for questions. Are you be submitting like the one I went to before COVID? They had a moderator that asked everybody questions. Is that
Rick has been voted to be our moderator by a unanimous vote from the committee. And you can be our Vanna White if you want to.
No, I was saying, I didn't know how the format was when you said questions. Is you're asking for questions that'll be, the moderator will ask the candidates that show up.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I've got one more thing. When I stopped at Rental Me This yesterday, got a quote for the equipment at $208.65. And I have a commitment from like a person of interest, a person who has a deep interest in CAN for $200 contribution to the sound system. So we might have net, I'll kick in the 885 or 865. And so we might have a net zero out of pocket.
Mike, if Bailey can't, if these other things don't pan out and Bailey doesn't get back to you, my week is flexible. Next week I'll come in with you. I'll bring my iPhone and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. You got it. Yeah. Just make sure you bring a USB cord.
Yep.
All that stuff. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any new business? Margit.
Hey, I'm part of a newly reassembled Parkway Forest neighborhood.
Right.
We have a few questions. One is about liability insurance.
So let me take that one because I arranged liability insurance for CAN, and I also arranged liability insurance for my neighborhood, which is Kenilworth Forest. So CAN liability insurance probably would not apply to a homeowners association because we're a weird group of people that don't have any actual location as an umbrella. For my neighborhood, we actually own a park inside our neighborhood. So we got a combination of what's called board and directors insurance, which is really for protection of the officers that make the best decision that they think is the right thing for their neighborhood. And then it turns out that there's somebody in the neighborhood who's very unhappy with that and likes to sue. So we have board and directors and officers insurance.
Directors and officers, yeah.
Directors and officers. And we have $1 million liability policy on anything that would go wrong in our park. Somebody falls off a terrace or runs into one of our concrete picnic tables or something like that. That costs us $775 a year. So we have people in our neighborhood who have been in other places in the world and who have been sued because of bad things that officers did. And we all agreed when we reformed in 2018 that we wouldn't take officer jobs unless we had some protection. We have some fairly outspoken human beings who I think wouldn't hesitate to sue. So I can provide you with the name and address of the insurance agent that we used. Patrick, you've got something to offer.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think a neighborhood association would be fine with just insurance that would cover board and officers. Unless you're planning a lot of public events, particularly on public property, I think you could get by with just insurance for board and officers.
you have another question?
Can you give me the name of your agent, or should I email?
I think I have your email address somewhere with these questions in it, so I will send my agent information
Okay.
to you.
Thank you.
Sharon, you had something to add?
Yeah, two things. I referred my agent. Are we still using Susan? Anyway, that was 3 years ago before COVID. That doesn't matter. I wanted to tell Patrick's correct, Margit, that if you have a party or something, you can get insurance that just covers that. And it covers just that, and you pay for it at that time, and it covers just that event that you have. And so you don't have to cover, as Patrick said, you don't need to cover yourself for everything at all times, except like what Rick has got, may have something that is potentially a problem for them, could be a problem for them with the park.
So Margit, email was flowing around between Helen and Patrick and I think we're going to come up with written answers to your questions.
Okay.
And we've only got like 9 minutes left in this, and I want to make sure that there's not another short new business thing from anybody else. So if you could just hang on for a second, that'd be great. Anybody else with new business? So let us get back to you on on the email. And thanks for coming. I know that this came at a time when you weren't sure you could attend, but I'll make sure that I have the homework to get you added to the board of directors list so that you'll get email on all this stuff and advance notice and meeting notices and all that kind of thing. So welcome to our crew.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Sharon, I see your hands up. You got something?
Yeah, I may have something for government relations that I called Patrick to talk to him about with a problem we're having with Mike Sewell and Lucy Crown of Greenways and our city park, Mountainside Park, where they want to make it use TDA money and bring in tourists for biking in our park and put bike trails in. And it's a neighborhood park, and we're not wanting the TDA money. And we at Easton Valley are, of course, the city comes in and tells us they're going to do this. And of course, we turn around and say, no, they're not. And so we're at that point now. And I may, on our working group that we have, come up with some more stuff and have presented to government relations. It may be something we need to deal with in government relations.
Okay, is that okay with you, Patrick, to you be the point on that? And we can always use email to keep everybody informed.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else new business? Can I get a motion to adjourn the board meeting?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Anybody opposed?
Mm-mm.
Okay, this is adjourned. You've got 6 minutes by my computer clock to grab a bite to eat, grab a beverage of choice, or do whatever else you can do in 6 minutes. And I'll see you all again at 6 o'clock sharp.
Do we have to sign out and sign back in, or can we just stop
stay.
video?
Just stay.
Just stay.
Just stay.
I break this up into 2 videos offline,
Okay.
for posting to YouTube after the fact. So this will just stay. I'm just going to leave the recording running. So if you want to tell jokes or anything on the side, you might want to put your mute on so that I don't capture you. Okay. All right. Captain Mike Lamb will be joining us pretty promptly at 6 o'clock, and we'll get started so that we have lots of room for live Q&A afterwards. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.